What's going on, Cardinals fans, and welcome into this edition of Cards Hub 365. I'm Brenden Schaeffer, along with Mike Claiborne of the Cardinals Radio Network. Claibs, the homestand for the Cardinals, wrapping up yesterday in a 4-2 fashion. You get the series win over Philly and the series win over Houston. Coming into the series with the pitching being a little bit rocky before that point, it's hard not to feel really good about where the Cardinals are now. And the question is, can they keep it rolling now on a road trip coming up through New York and Atlanta?
Well, that's a really good question because they're facing good teams. The two teams they won series against were in postseason last year. And I don't know, Brendan, have you seen a team face better pitching? We'll go back to Paul Skeens, and you go through that Houston rotation, and we saw their three best pitchers. And then all of a sudden, here comes another team right behind them in Philadelphia. I'm sorry, Philadelphia first. Yeah. We saw their three best guys. And then here comes Houston. We see their three best guys, or two of the three. And you end up winning 4 of the 6 games. I mean, it says a lot about what they're doing. And that question has been asked a lot. Can they keep this up? Well, I guess the question is, why not? Because of the fact now that you know you can do it, this isn't a situation where you're scratching your head in June or July wondering, oh, man, we're going to face some good pitching. You know, how are we going to figure this out? Well, they've already done it. So now I think you go back to the basics of saying, all right, we know we did right. Let's build on that. And let's also be prepared for the adjustments that we're going to see. And I think right now the key for this team is being able to recognize when an adjustment needs to be made and what is it going to be.
Cards Up 365, powered by Gray Bar and sponsored by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Claibs, you mentioned the pitchers they beat. They beat Skeens. It was a pitcher's duel against Nola. They got the win. They got to walk Zach Wheeler, pretty well in the game on Sunday to win that Phillies series. Hunter Brown in the Houston series gives them a little bit of trouble, but they got Framber Valdez, who's another really good arm. So the offense doing its part more often than not is key. But what about the starting pitching? Because when you look at this Cardinal rotation, I think when we were in the middle of that second turn through, we were going, oh boy, like, is this thing going to be sustainable? And they're talking about making it a 6-man rotation. I'm not so sure. Since then, though, Claves, we have seen this group really be able to roll it over and do a nice job.
Well, they have. And, you know, one of the things I think we as people who follow the game and even fans have to take into account at this time of the year, 6 innings is going to be your limit in most cases. If you can get 6 innings or 6 2/3, somewhere along that line, then he's done. And that's when you turn it over to the bullpen. And I really look at this situation as being one where the bullpen has got to come into play, maybe more than the starter, because you're going to have a couple of guys that can give you more than 1 inning. You're going to have a couple of guys who can go back to back. You're going to have at least one guy who understands what closing is all about, that final inning, those final 3 outs. And I don't know whether he's done it at the big league level or at the minor league level, but somebody's got to have that mentality other than Ryan Helsley, because that's going to come up if you continue to play well.
In the combination they've had over the past 7 days, checking the stats here on MLB.com, Cardinals collectively have a 1.67 ERA, which ranks second in baseball behind only San Diego during the past week of baseball. And that's starters and relievers combining to do a nice job. I want to ask you about one reliever in particular where I was pretty impressed to see him come in and pitch that 7th inning yesterday. That's Kyle Lehey. That was the 3rd appearance in 4 days for him, and he's a guy who really just seems to be working his way into that circle of trust for Cardinals manager Oliver Marmol.
You hit the nail on the head. Circle of trust. He was in some lower leverage situations last year when we saw him. This year he had a really good spring, and they continue to give him more and more. And the fact that he is as effective in day 2 as he is in the first day he pitches, I think that says a lot. And I'll roll this out to you. Is he a guy that, as he continues this ascension, is he a guy that maybe you look at maybe as a potential starter next year?
That's an interesting one. Claves, back in spring training, they kind of talked about it and said, hey, this is a guy we're going to stretch out. And we're thinking Kyle Lehey as a starter, that's interesting when you have so many other arms. I think the thought process at that time was he's going to be one of those guys, as you mentioned, that can give you multiples out of the pen. But as the stuff continues to play up for him and you think about the future, Why not throw him into that conversation when you get to Jupiter next February, considering the leaps that he has made? I'll tell you what, the one that really impressed me was the pitch to Altuve, the changeup that got him looking silly the other day. There are some things that he can do that I maybe wouldn't have pegged him for that back in 2023 when we first saw him.
Well, I also look at this, whether it's Pozo or Pages, they call good games and having a feel for what a guy has. One of the things I've learned about Lehey, he has more than just a heater. He throws a changeup, he throws some other pitches just to show it, and he keeps you off balance. And I think the catchers have had a lot to do with the fact of making sure they stay in a certain lane against certain hitters. And that's something that shouldn't be overlooked. But, listen, the way pitchers are falling in the minor leagues for the Cardinals now, you've lost Hentz, you've lost Jerpy, and you've lost Quinn Matthews. I mean, let's face it, the Cardinals are in dire need of future pitching. And maybe Lehey is a guy that now moves up in the chain, because with those three guys going down, they're not going to have enough innings on their arms, in my opinion, that are going to make them viable for this year with regard to starting. So you might as well start thinking about guys for next year when spring training opens, and you'll have a different look from a pitching standpoint that he might be in the mix. Now, with that said, I better go out and find somebody who can replace him in the bullpen.
That's a good point. It's one of those roles that we have seen year over year. It's important. It's not necessarily always the guy that's your seventh inning, your eighth inning, or your closing type of pitcher, the setup men that bridge to your closer, but you got to have a full bullpen. And Kyle Lehey's been a really important part of that, Claibs. And now with Steven Matz in the rotation, I was impressed by what he did Wednesday on what was a limited pitch count, but still found a way to qualify for the win in that game. You kind of look and say, what's the carnage of the bullpen? What's going to be left within that group now that it's up to everybody else to kind of pick up that extra slack? How do you anticipate that going on this trip as you face a tough Mets lineup and then the Braves thereafter?
Well, it's a good question. And I don't like to have turning points in the season take place this early, but I really think this is going to be one, and how this bullpen is used and how they approach things, because they don't have any off days. You can chew up a bullpen pretty good here, and you're going to be one short with the 6-man rotation. So that means you have to have two things working for you. You have to have at least two of your starters get to the 7th inning, and you're going to have a couple of guys who can work back-to-back days and maybe give you more than an inning in both situations. So those are the things that you have to have, and you can't have a guy blowing up after 2 innings of work. If he does that, then you're going to really be in trouble, because I don't know if you have anything in Memphis that can come in and save the day. We haven't seen Swanson pitch yet, but he was having a reasonably decent season early on. But I really think, Brendan, if you don't watch it, this thing can get away from you real quick, and it's just very difficult to recover in season, especially if your minor leagues aren't providing the help you need.
Right. We've already seen how the week-to-week way that we feel about the rotation can change over the course of time. Turn through for the group was not a very good one. Since then, it's been going well. Incumbent upon those guys like Miles Michaelis, who had a rough one in Boston, but then came back, and Claibs, he at least gave
you a chance.
He gave you a chance against Philly. Yeah. And that Schwarber, that situation in the first where he maybe gets beat by a bad
squeezed
ball.
on a bad. Yeah, exactly.
What happens there, Claibs, is that happens, right? But then he makes that quintessential mistake to Castellanos where he's in a 2-strike count. He puts it over the middle of the plate, and Castellanos, takes him for a double on it. Like, those are the things that Miles Michaelis, we feel like, has to get out of his game. But if he's your number 6 in your rotation and just getting you through 5, I almost think the rule for him is don't get blown up. Don't only go 2 or 3, because this is a rotation and a bullpen. The way that it's constructed, it can't afford that from really anybody if you're going to ask the bullpen to go 1 man down for a 6-man rotation for the coming weeks.
Well, as we know, Miles Michaelis as a strike thrower, here's the key for him. When he gets to 2 strikes, he can't throw another strike. He's got to make them chase. He's got to make them miss. He can't lay one in. And the ability to pitch around trouble. Now, granted, Castellanos has killed the Cardinals in his time in the big leagues. And, when you saw that matchup, you're saying to yourself, uh-oh. Because normally Miles has been able to pitch around trouble. At least he's had the experience.
Right.
But in that situation, getting a bad call, and you have to wonder how much did that take away from him from a concentration standpoint. And, the good pitchers just turn the page. Guys who are kind of wondering about their stuff, they think about it 1 second too long, They don't have conviction in their next pitch, and the next thing you know, they're using a new baseball because that one has been put in play pretty hard. So hopefully a lesson learned. The umpiring, I got to tell you, I can't wait for the balls and strike system to change. Because we're seeing too many guys who are getting squeezed and not knowing the strike zone. Now, with that said, those pitchers who have those sweepers and the sliders who end up finishing out of the zone, they're going to have to make sure their stuff is tighter too. But, you just don't want to go down on a pitch that's just flat out missed. And, when you get into a consistent mode of that happening, man, it's just hard to dig out of that hole when your stuff is a little shaky in the first place.
It's going to be really interesting. That ABS challenge system, we assume, has to be in place for 2026. It seemed to go well in spring, and I think all parties, other than maybe the umpires themselves, that'll have a little bit of additional accountability are going to be in favor of that. On Card Sub 365 today, powered by Gray Bar, your comments are welcome. Subscribe to the Sports of STL channel on YouTube, and then you can join into the live chat. And, of course, all of our content here on Sports Hub STL is brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Claibs, I want to ask you a little bit of a shift here into your thoughts on the Cardinal offense right now. We've seen a couple of games where maybe a little bit quieter, but I used yesterday as an example. You face a pitcher in Blanco that is a no-hitter to his name in the MLB and having a little bit of a rough start to the season. But the Cardinals found a way to keep grinding until they were able to break through with the Nootbaar home run in the fifth. Is that kind of the way you see this offense right now when you're playing against tougher pitchers? They're not necessarily mailing it in just because the first few innings don't go their way.
Well, yeah, they continue to fight. I know that this may be breaking news to some, but the Cardinals aren't going to have 10 hits every night. Okay. They're not going to be double digits because, they normally pay the other guy with the ball in his hand a lot of money to get people out. And he's going to have his day. And I'll give you a good example. Hunter Brown was, as I said to Ali, that was a tip of the cap night to the other guy because it was nothing you could do. Now, you had him on the ropes a couple of times, but when he had to bear down, he did. And that's going to happen. That's going to happen. The key is you just don't want to have back-to-back days like that. One of the things that's impressed me is how the Cardinals have dealt with left-handed pitching so far this year, especially their left-handed bats, be it Nootbaar or Donovan and even Nolan Gorman. They've had some very good at-bats against left-handed pitching, which used to be a bugaboo for the Cardinals. And it may end up being one this year, but the Cardinals have gotten off to a good start in dealing with that. That's one of the things I've been most impressed with. Throw in the two-strike approach. Mm-hmm. That's another item that I like. And when you have runners on base, in talking to Brant Brown, he's an interesting guy, first of all. He said there's a time to slug and there's a time to hit. And, I think situations call for that. And one of the situations that we've seen recently is the propensity for Victor Scott II to try and lay down more bunts.
Yeah.
I mean, if you recall last year, Brendan, the only reason we even knew who Michael Ciani was is the fact he was bunting to get on base. He got away from it. And now Michael Ciani's, he's not as effective. Victor Scott II has tried to lay down some bunts. Now, he's had some success, and there have been a couple of times I'm sure he would like to have a pitch back. But, man, the different weapons that the Cardinals are showing in their propensity to go with the flow. Here's another good example. Yesterday, Lars Nootbaar, he hit a curveball to dead center field. Now, normally guys sit on a curveball. They want to try and pull it into the next county. He hit it where it was pitched. He was rewarded with the home run. So what the Cardinals appear to be doing is taking what they're given and making full advantage of it.
And I think a good example in that same inning, Claibs, was Sajaci just going the other way.
Yeah.
Nothing special about that blue pit, but it set the table for what Nootbaar was able to do at a spot in the outing where Blanco was starting to wear down. I think that coincided perfectly for the Cardinals to have those 4 innings, maybe not produce any fruit, but then you do see that at bat and those string of at bats in the fifth be able to provide that. Now, remind people of one more thing. We talk about the offense, and you mentioned, hey, you're not picking up 10 hits every day. What I would add is that the Cardinals lead MLB in batting average at 280, and their OPS is third in the league at 783. So if the Cardinals aren't getting their 10 hits every day and still ranking the way that they're ranking across the league, imagine maybe what that might mean for everybody else. They're doing okay when it comes to the rest of the league and comparatively. So you got to love that for now.
And one of the other items I know they want to be more proficient in is runners in scoring position.
Mhm.
That's something every team obviously wants to be better at. But if you recall last year, it was like hands over the face because you knew this was not going to end well in a lot of cases. But this year, you call it timely hitting, call it whatever you want, but they have been more effective with runners in scoring position. Hence the reason why they scored so many runs.
Yeah, they're ninth in batting average and eighth in OPS with runners in scoring position, which definitely does make a difference. In a moment, we're going to preview what Claibs thinks about the upcoming series at the Mets, but we're going to take a moment to let you know that Sports Hub STL is brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours, and you can turn your knowledge of NBA basketball, maybe baseball, maybe some hockey with the NHL playoffs coming into cash today. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly with just a $5 entry, and DraftKings Pick 6 is now available in Missouri. So download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins. Only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Now, Claibs, the Cardinals starting a new 4-game set tonight in New York, out in Queens against the Mets. It'll be Andre Pallante on the hill. I believe the Mets have now announced their starters, although they took some time to do it. Griffin Canning will be taking the hill tonight for New York. How do you view the way the Cardinals might line up in this series? We know they're 8-4 at home this year, but that first road trip wasn't particularly kind to the Redbirds, just one win across those two cities.
Yeah, you have to wipe that one off the deck. It's part of a 162-game season. A lot of things didn't go well for you, and maybe you learn from it. I thought, excuse me, I thought they were better in Pittsburgh. Obviously, Pittsburgh not the team that Boston is, but I thought that especially against Skeens, they did some things well. And realistically, they could have won the final game in that series, going into extra innings. Maybe some things that you would have probably done differently on the bases. But overall, I thought they finished the road trip stronger than what their record would have indicated. Now, going into New York, the first thing you have to think about is it's a 4-game series. So that means two things. You're going to see everybody. Everyone's going to play. And it really hinges on what the first night starter does in Pallante. And Pallante, in my opinion, has been your best pitcher. He gives you length. He gives you a variety. He can counter the left-handed bats that they have in the Mets lineup. And it should be a good start for them. Griffin Canning, he's 1-1. He's a guy that's still trying to find himself. And, let's be honest, Griffin Canning probably wouldn't have this sort of presence had they not had so many injuries with their pitching staff. So, the Mets are playing well, and this will be a good setup. Now, I haven't heard anything more on Siri. They lost Siri the other night in center field. He was a guy they were really counting on. So how they fix things going into this series will be an interesting challenge, hence the reason why maybe they waited for a while to announce their lineup, just making sure that when everybody gets back in, they came off of a road trip too, where how do you feel? Some guys are still trying to find their way as we're at the halfway mark of the month of April. So there are a lot of things that go into that first game, but I can promise you this, by game 4 on Sunday, they would be tired looking at the Mets, and the Mets will be tired looking at the Cardinals, and everybody will play in this series.
I think that's a great point. Friday's game, Michaelis against David Peterson, who is off to a pretty good start for New York this year, a 2.7 ERA. We talked about what it's going to need to be for Miles. Just get him through 5+ and give him a chance. And then the Cardinals will see a couple of really good starters, Claibs, over the weekend. Kodai Senga, who has the nasty ghost fork pitch, I believe they call it, will get the ball for the Mets according to the probable starters listed on Saturday. And Sunday, Clay Holmes, a converted reliever who's also off to a good start. It's no rest for the weary, Claibs. When you face some of the pitchers we have mentioned the Cardinals seeing over the past week, this weekend doesn't get any easier, but that's MLB. That's if you want to be up at the upper echelon of the National League. You're facing these types of arms and hopefully more often than not coming away competitive against them.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head. That they faced guys like this before. So this isn't something like you're saying, oh, man, what are we going to, woe is us. No, hey, this is big leagues, man. You have to beat good teams every now and then. Senga is the wild card here because of his injury situation, and he has a pitch that can really mess you up for the foreseeable future. So I'll be interested to see what Ali runs out with regard to a lineup against a guy like that. But the best thing about Miles Michaelis' start, if Palante can give you 7 quality innings, that means you're going to have a reasonably rested bullpen for tomorrow. For tomorrow when Michaelis goes.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, if you can have a bullpen that can help Michaelis get through it, the other guys, you'll find a way to get them in the game because, as I said, everybody's going to pitch. And nobody's going to have this weekend off. But it really is all predicated on how well Andre Palante gets off on the right foot. The weather should be reasonably good in New York for the weekend. And that's the other thing. We haven't had that consistent weather. And the reason why I bring it up, when you have guys who like to throw breaking balls and like to have a feel for the ball, when the weather dips and you don't have the moisture or the texture that really gives you a feel where you can get that good grip, and then all of a sudden you start relegating yourself to other pitches that you really don't like to throw, but you have to throw in order to keep yourself competitive. Once you get in that consistent weather, you'll start to see the pitchers take this thing back.
Going to be really interesting to see the Cardinals continue to play against some top competition. And you will be right back here. Well, not you, not me, Claibs, but somebody will be right back here tonight after the game for the Card Sub post game on Sports Hub STL, breaking everything down. And we'll have shows all throughout the weekend, throughout the series against the Mets. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel out there and stay tuned to all of our content here on Sports Hub STL. Claibs, that'll wrap it up for us today. If you have any parting thoughts to get out of the way before this final moment of the show.
Well, I'm looking forward to this weekend. We'll probably have Mason Wynn back next week.
There you go.
And that'll be a plus. But I'm anxious to hear what our viewers and listeners have to say after this weekend, or even during the course of the weekend. And apparently it's going to rain all weekend. So why not tune in? You can listen to the games on the Cardinal Radio Network. And we'd love to hear your thoughts along the way. We're going to be covering this thing 365 days a year. This would be a good weekend to kind of go back and forth, and we'll learn about this team together, as this is going to be a fun series. I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but I like the direction of the Cardinals as we speak.
I agree with that, Claibs. That'll do it for us on Card Sub 365, powered by Gray Bar and presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. For Mike Claiborne, I'm Brenden Schaeffer, and we'll talk to you next time.